Photoshop and Procreate are both incredible tools for artists, photographers, and designers, but every program has its limits. How do these apps compare on the iPad, and are they worth buying? Let's break it down. Hey everyone, Candy again with another art and design video. If you're interested in more content like this, make sure to subscribe to Retroviolet Studios and check out our Patreon, social media sites, or donate via the link tree in the description. Anyone who's used a tablet for drawing and painting understands that it's a real game changer for artists and designers, especially those who have previously been using a computer exclusively or who want to fix up traditional art that's been scanned into an editing program. The response and accuracy of the Apple Pencil is incredible in art apps, and when necessary, there are ways to easily switch back and forth between a computer and iPad to have total control over projects. Procreate is an iPad and iPhone only app, while Photoshop can be used on most tablets, phones, and computers. So when you're just getting started with creative work on the iPad, how do you decide which program to use? Well, there are a lot of differences, and it may be best to use both. So let's go ahead and get into it. Price. Since it's made by Adobe, a membership is required to use Photoshop. But if it's used heavily on the desktop or you use other Adobe programs, the cost might make sense or already be part of your budget. A 20GB cloud subscription to Lightroom and Photoshop is $9.99 a month, and for Photoshop alone with 100GB of cloud storage, it's $19.99 a month. Procreate is a one-time purchase of $9.99, but the software isn't compatible with anything other than the iPad. Brushes and fonts. When it comes to designing and making artwork, most creators already know that having access to a large library of fonts and brushes is really important because it allows for easy creation in a wider range of techniques and styles. Photoshop on the desktop is great for that, but it's a feature that's visibly limited on the iPad. The default brushes are minimal, and there are just a few adjustments that can be made to them. Recently, though, Adobe did expand the capabilities of the app by finally allowing users to import brush files, but the ability to import fonts is still unavailable. In Procreate, any brush or font file can be added to the libraries, and the customization of the brushes is expansive. Each adjustment can be saved as its own brush, then organized into folders for later use. From the font menu, fonts can be chosen and the size or spacing of the letters can be changed, as well as a handful of other character traits to make designs pop. Smudge and Blur. Some really vital tools in Photoshop on the desktop are the Smudge tool, along with Burn, Dodge, and Blur, which are all absent in the iPad version, and there aren't any filters or adjustments to add even a simple blur on an image. In Procreate, there is a Smudge tool, which can be utilized with any brush and adjusted for opacity, pressure sensitivity, flow, and more. There are a few types of blur filters, including Gaussian blur and motion blur, which can be applied to a whole layer or with a brush in specific areas like a mask, and have extra characteristics which can be adjusted. Layer limits. The layer limit in Photoshop tends to be around 100 layers for most projects, but while the number of layers already made is visible, there's nowhere that actually displays how many are left to use. In Procreate, the limits are clear, and they are dependent on the capabilities of your model of iPad and the dimensions of the project canvas. If attempts are made to import a file that's too large, the program won't be able to handle the number of layers and will fail, occasionally crashing the app. So sometimes it's necessary to use another program to bring down the size and get the file to open. Using Photoshop, layers can be flattened or deleted before being shared directly to Procreate to assure that an import is successful and that there are extra layers available for the work being done. Layer settings. Procreate layers can be set to alpha lock, which locks all the existing pixels and doesn't allow transparent areas to be painted over, a feature that's also present in Photoshop for the desktop, but not the iPad. Procreate also has a unique reference layer feature, which is often used on solid outlines for color blocking, that among other things makes color fills dropped on another layer stay inside the referenced outline instead of filling the entire canvas. Photoshop doesn't have that in the desktop or iPad versions, but does have adjustment layers in which things like vibrance, exposure, and curves can be adjusted. However, those options are limited. Layer effects. Similar to adjustment layers are Procreate's filter effects, including classic adjustments like hue, saturation, and color balance, and more complex filters like liquify, chromatic aberration, and halftone. It's also where users will find the blur effects I mentioned earlier. Any of these effects can be applied to the layer as a whole or with a brush, like a mask. However, it's a permanent action performed directly on the layer, so making a copy before using the filter may be a good idea. Healing and cloning. Photoshop's spot healing tool on the iPad actually works really well, often better than the desktop version, and the clone tool is easier to use than the one in Procreate. Procreate doesn't have a spot healing tool, but users who are comfortable editing blemishes manually shouldn't have an issue. Exporting. Both programs allow exporting in a range of file formats. Photoshop can export PNG, JPEG, PSD, and TIFF, with quality options for JPEG and PNG. Procreate has more choices with PNG, JPEG, PSD, TIFF, PDF, and Procreate files. Both apps having the ability to import and export projects in PSD format is really important to note for people using both programs, because it means layered files can be shared seamlessly to Photoshop on your iPad, where they're automatically uploaded into the Adobe Cloud for further editing on a computer, or vice versa. But Procreate's export capabilities show their power even further with the options to save layers in individual PNGs or render animated PNGs, GIFs, MP4s, or HVAC files using project layers, meaning artists have the ability to create moving images with a little work and export them effortlessly. It also has built-in canvas recording with different resolution and quality options, and 30-second or full-length time-lapse export options to catalog or share process work at the end of a project, without including any toolbars or menus in the final video render, like a traditional screen recording. If you plan to only use your iPad for design and creation, Procreate is a fantastic choice, since the extremely limited nature of Photoshop on the tablet means it's harder to get your money's worth out of a subscription. However, if you use your computer as well, taking advantage of the ease of moving files between programs means getting both the comfort and accuracy of using a stylus to draw with nearly unlimited brush options in Procreate, as well as the complex functionality of the desktop version of Photoshop, which has a wider range of capabilities than any iPad app. And if you're already paying for an Adobe subscription, it doesn't make sense to not pay an extra $10 just one single time to be able to use a highly dynamic drawing program that's compatible with programs you already know and love. That's all for this video. If you have questions or want me to go down the rabbit hole on a specific topic, let me know in the comments, and make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to keep up with our future content. Plus, check out the link tree in the description of this video to follow our social media pages, become a member of our Patreon, or support the channel with direct donations. And until next time, take care of yourself and each other.